Good morning, traders. This is Perry Wilkie with StartupTrading.com. It is 6 minutes till 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, January 15th. So looking back at yesterday's session, right, we kind of had a leg down in the overnight session, and then we continued just to go down and build volume lower. But we'll get into some of the technicals of that. But you can see that as we built lower, it just built higher coming back up, right? This is kind of a streak on the way down, and then just a massive fill on the way back up. Uh, and then looking at, where we printed, uh, the SPY got down to 686. The Qs got down just under 615 at 614.56. And then the cash market, right? 6,900. I was expecting a little bit of a bid just above 6,900, but I should have been, we've seen this game and movie play out before. Uh, we went 15 points under it, just really consolidated under that level and just no acceptance. And when I say, to the layman, this probably looks like, well, look at all the time we spent and look at how it was resistance, but it's only 15 points, right? I'll get into it when we look at the options market and the gamma, but 15 points is not, acceptance below. You need to be at least 25 to 50 points below that. I mean, as far as day trading, that's a lot of room. But what I'm saying is, you just got this 15 points down over and over and over again. Could not get anywhere. Come back up, and then where do we close? Basically, right back at the overnight low and the one-day expected low move range into the range for the day. So the market makers didn't lose their ass basically. So we closed right around 69.25, 26.60, close enough for government work. And if you look at the splits that were on the sessions before, you had that 69.35 and that 69.70 basically, just kind of waffle below. And again, about another 12 points under that as well yesterday. And then for the NASDAQ, there was a split at 25,457 uh, that really didn't, 30 points, uh, just no traction at all. And you can see on that last bid, that's where it touched back to that part of the auction before it rammed up. And the same with the ES. It checked back down into the 69.35 quarter and then rammed back up into the close. So before we get into anything else, I always like to look at, are there any scheduled catalysts? We always know there can be unscheduled catalysts, like are we taking over Greenland? Are we taking over Somalia? We're gonna buy Europe? I don't know. But unscheduled things go on all the time. But looking at what's on the schedule, there's really nothing left on the books for the week. But what I do want to point out, and I have to admit, I don't follow this uh, report that much, but unemployment claims, come in, so. But what really strikes me as I glanced at this morning is this Empire State Manufacturing Index. It was supposed to come in at 0.8%. Last print was at, minus 3.9, and it coming at 7.7. That looks like a huge beat to me. And then looking at the Philly Fed Manufacturing Index, it was supposed to come in at negative 1.6. That's contraction. The last print was minus 10.2. And we come in at a positive 12.6. That looks like a hell of a beat. So it looks like, again, I don't follow those to know how much of an outlier it is or how often that happens. But just at a first glance, I don't remember the last time that I saw these things this far out of whack and to to be beating that much. So that is something that will be digested here this morning in the markets. Keep that in mind. So I don't like to talk too much about Jack's technical analysis. Jack's the technical on his, but I would like to point out one of my favorite indicators I've worked with him over the years on is his mid studies. The mid, the lower mid, the upper mid. But if you look at the yesterday action, and I'm not going to scroll over, I guess I could, but we kind of on the NASDAQ, that was the key for yesterday, right? Once the session opened, right in the overnight, stuck at the mid, stuck below the mid, kind of went down, 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 blah, 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 blah. And the ES just stuck basically below the lower mid at the same time yesterday. But as we come back into tonight, right, around 1 o'clock in the morning, we crossed over the mid on the NASDAQ, right? Come back down, and that was the floor, right? Checked back at 3 a.m. And then for the ES, coming over and just, hitting its head on the mid, got a little bit of a test above it. But again, that crossover at, 12:30 in the morning, and really, come back down 2.5 points or something, a point and a half under it later, and just has never looked back. So that is really there's two things that I really like to look at for just cheap sentiment and positioning and money flow or whatever you will. Uh, are we above or below the mid, and are we above or below the VWAP? Right, those are the two things that I watch the most probably anymore. But anyways, hats off to Jack in that study. It's still one of my favorites that we ever did together. So as we look at uh, the untested points of control, yesterday's point of control uh, was is 69.44, right? We didn't even touch that so far in the overnight session, and I'm almost going to build a study for this for the 3 day, high and the 3 day low. It looks like anytime that we're in, kind of an uptrend, if we take out 3 days of lows or more, right? If you go back and look at the sessions we took out yesterday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We took out a 6 day low, right? Uh, and again, no acceptance under where we should have if we're going to keep going down, and just that poor low that was formed yesterday, and then just a right up. So, or if draw a trend line on the tops of these highs, just eyeballing it, that would put it up to like for today, right around 7,060. I don't know if we can get all the way up there today, but I can see if we don't, if this isn't a pop and a flop today, that maybe by early next week we could be heading up to the top of this channel, which by then could be around 70, 75 or so. So again, we are still in the same pattern for the NASDAQ and the ES. The ES is kind of shifted, right? It kind of had, I'll do this, try to do this. It usually doesn't work too well when I'm streaming, but we'll see. The ES had this before, flat tops and coming up like this. Most traders think, and I don't know what, you could go to Investopedia or whatever and look at it. Most traders think this is doing this. But in my experience over the time that I've been trading, I would say that over 60% of the time, the resolution is to the downside. You might get that little bit of a look above or whatever, but this is usually uh, a bear flag, and everyone's pinned up on the wrong, because what do you got? You got stops here, stops here, stops here, stops here, and it just ends up being a huge stop run to the downside after really not getting much higher highs, is the way it usually plays out. Doesn't mean it's always going to play out right. It's like the 80% rule. 20% of the time it still goes the other way, right? So, and then you've got the NASDAQ now that was really forming, as we look at it, it had this pattern is what it looked like last week, right? It kind of looked like that pennant, right? It kind of looked like this. But now, you're up above here and here. So now what's it look like? It basically looks like this now. It looks like the ES's pattern was before, where you've got, these highs pushing into here. So until we, and I've said, I don't think the ES is going to be the key to, figuring out this longer consolidation trading pattern. I think it's going to be the NASDAQ that's going to tip its head. And if you look, between these two, you've got you still need to get up to 26,670 to take out the all-time high here in the futures, where we just put in 2 days ago that high. So there's potential that, this is one of the times that we end up breaking out to the upside, and we get closer, if not taking out this on the NASDAQ. That's about, 700 points up from where we are, 800 points in there. Obviously, it's not all happening today, but, if it does, that's it. And then any type of failure from the ES, right? The ES is going to have to be, uh, there's no way that the ES just sits here and pokes around and here it's going to at least hit 7,100 probably for the NASDAQ to get another all-time high, if that's indeed what we're doing. So if we look at value in the overnight session, you've got, uh, all the indexes are at value area high or above. It's really the Dow and the Russell that are just at value area high. You've got these that are just one time framing up, and this is right. Dislocation, short squeeze, people off sides, whatever little thing, silly phrase you want to use. But basically, we're one time framing. So this could be an impulse move up to the upside. But what I really want to watch is we're at the 1 day expected move. We're above it for the uh, NASDAQ, and we're approaching it for the ES, right? If we look at auctions, if we just kind of pinch this down a little bit, you can see that above 7,015 for the ES, there's really nothing profile-wise up there to glean on. So if we lean on the NASDAQ for that type of technical analysis, 26,166 is really that next split up above in the current auction that we're in. So I always say that you need a catalyst, right, to stay above uh, these expected high moves, and you need help from the VIX, right, to do that, whether it's to the downside or the upside. And again, those manufacturing reads this morning were just huge, in my opinion. Uh, we'll have to see, what that does. I would think that would, if anything, that would make the Fed a little bit more hesitant to cut rates. But, you know, there's going to be a few more prints before, that comes into fruition. So looking at positioning real quick, and again, if we scroll down to the bottom of the sheet when I post these out, I know this is kind of busy for you guys, but if you're watching every day, I'm sharing it. You should kind of, through osmosis, you should kind of get the feel for what's going on here. Uh, but if you look at these, right, you got gamma, you know, lots of gamma on the even hundreds, right? Because that's how institutions and that's easy to do, right? Lots of things. And then you got, the next largest gammas on the 50s, and then you got 25. So yesterday we couldn't even get when the Nasdaq or when the SPX broke 6,900, we couldn't even get to 68.75. We stopped at around 68.85, right? You need at least you need to at least, think of these as markers, right? You got a half marker, one marker. Uh, think about these as half markers, uh, and then each of the 50s is one marker, right? If you want to really blow it out, we could, come up with some other math for it. But you at least need to get, 25 points down and then be under that for acceptance below one of these larger markers. And you just did not get that yesterday. And then as soon as we crossed back over 6,900, that was it. So then we, closed up in here. But if you watch these, right, those really they're like support resistance lines. It doesn't mean they're going to react every time, but gives you a barometer of what's going on. So there's not a lot going on in the cash today that we can really hang our hats on. For the SPY, you've got, we closed at 690. We're at 694 basically right now. So you're right in here. So 695 is really what the bulls need to find acceptance over otherwise, we're just kind of meandering at the top of the range. You can see from these call positions, right? You've got a lot between 695 and 698. So it'd be uh, about another 31 points higher than the ES is trading right now. So that would put us right around 70.32, 70.33 is where this would end up being. So we can watch that. And then looking at the Qs at the same spot, right? We are trading 626.27 after closing at 619 half, right? So we've every, $5 is basically 205 to 210 points on the NQ. So we've already, crossed over that. So 625 is going to be your bogey today. And you can see there's a lot of gamma for the week on 627. So we're approaching that, and each one of these dollars is around 40 and a half to 41 points in the NQ. So you're coming up on approaching this 627 as I speak. So we'll see what we get from there in 628. So this could be a little bit of a stall. I would like to see a back and fill. I'd like to see a recheck of 625 to be honest with you, and I wouldn't mind seeing a little haggling between 625 and 627 in the early going today before it picks whether it wants to try 630 or not later in the day. That would be an 80-point range, bouncing back and forth. I think that'd be pretty good for us day traders. So that's really what I'm watching this morning. Uh, a little bit more probably on the NASDAQ than the ES. As long as, again, I said it yesterday, the cash market, right, we're stuck between 6,900 and 7,000 until proven otherwise. So, we're up 36 points. So if you add that to it, we'd be up around uh, 69.60 or so this morning. So we'd be, let's see if 69.50 holds for the pop and flop. If you want to see that happen, if you're bearish, right, because we're up around this one day expected moves, you want to see really us just drive right through 69.50 on the cash after we open, and you want to see that start to become resistance, and then maybe you can get that gap fill if that's what you think is going on today. Otherwise, if we stay above 69.50, just look for us kind of migrate up towards 69.75 and then go from there. I hope this helps. You guys have a great day. We'll see what Jack's looking at next, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.